Hello everyone, I'm Kealy and this is Voice of a Creative, and today I'm here to do a review of the Reeta Shirt Dress by Named Clothing. So for a while now I've been looking to make a few shirt dresses and actually expand my pattern horizons in woven fabrics. Now when I first started sewing I sewed a lot of woven fabrics, but actually I then got into jersey and it was so much easier to sew and fit that I focused more on that, and now I'm just getting back round again to doing both jersey and woven garments. And whenever people wear shirt dresses I always look at them and go, oh, I wish I had a few shirt dresses, and hence the reason why I decided to make this. Now there are lots of shirt dress options out there and I have made the vintage shirt dress by Sew Over It before, but I wanted one that would be a more relaxed feel, perfect for summer, and this pattern did not disappoint at all. It is a fantastic pattern and I have worn my Reeta shirt dress a couple of times already and I can't wait to make some more of them. So I will pop in a picture of the line drawing. So the Reeta shirt dress has longer length sleeves and it is a midi length dress with splits at the sides, buttons down the front and a two-step collar. You've got the buttons at the front but you've also got a drawstring at the waist, and for me that's really important because I really do like to emphasise my waist even in a looser fitting garment. So starting off choosing my size, so my bust measurement is 37 inches, my waist hovers between 31 and 32 inches, and then my hips, although it didn't really matter in this shirt dress, hover between kind of 41 to 43 inches depending on when it is, kind of thing. So I decided to go for the size, the UK size 14. So the measurements for that one were 37 3/4 inches for the bust, 31.5 for the waist, and the hip was 41, so I fitted really well into those measurements. When I looked at the finished garment measurements, actually the main one that matters is the bust measurement, because you're actually going to have quite a lot of fabric at the waist because you drawstring it in, and around the hips again you've got plenty of fabric. Even though I have got a 10-inch difference between my waist and my hip, actually there's plenty of room in the finished garment measurements. So for the size 14, the finished garment measurements at the bust were 40.5 inches, waist 45 and hip 51. So I knew I would have plenty of space in there. Regardless, because this was a new pattern, I did make a test version out of some red cotton. Now I just made the bodice because I knew actually the skirt would fit. That's plenty of room for me. So I just wanted to check the bodice and especially the shoulders, because actually I've had a few problems with shoulders in garments in the past and not being able to move my arms. I like to be able to move in any garment that I kind of have. In the test version, I literally just made it up, sewed it as it were, and it fitted perfectly, and I'm so surprised because not having to make any adjustments to a pattern is an incredible thing to happen. The only thing I thought is that actually the sleeves were way too long for me, so I don't prefer sleeves that come down nearly to my elbow. I feel that makes me look quite broad across my chest, and I do always prefer a shorter sleeve. So I already knew that one of the adjustments I might make is to shorten the sleeve. I did wonder a little bit about the waist on the pattern, because the pattern's drafted for someone who's slightly taller than me. Yeah, so I'm 5'4.5-ish, and the pattern's drafted for 5'8", so I thought I might have to make some adjustments at the waist, but surprisingly I didn't, and it actually turned out fine. So if you are taller, it might be that you want to make some adjustments at the waist, but just really check that because it's important that the drawstring really does bring you in at the waist, because that's where it's supposed to be. So the fabric I decided to use was this one. This is a Dashwood rayon that I got from John Lewis, and I think that this would work well in any kind of viscose or viscose twill fabrics. If you wanted a slightly more structured look, you could go for a cotton, but just bear in mind that the drawstring is going to end up with quite a bit of fabric, and obviously with a stiffer cotton that's going to be a bit poofier. But if you want that look, then it could look really good. I've got a few Japanese cottons and I am wondering whether I could slim down the size of the dress a little bit to just reduce that amount of fabric and make it out of one of those, because I think it would work really well. So initial adjustments when I cut out the pieces, so I did shorten the sleeve, so the initial one came down to about here, so I took a couple of inches off. So this is the sleeve piece because it does have like a cuff on it, so all I did was fold it up like this, and that's the sleeve piece that I used. So I just measured down on each side, so measure down here and the other side, and I think it was 3.5 inches that I measured down. and then I just cut out the piece like that. The second adjustment I made was to the length. Now, when I held the piece up against me, the length of the dress came nearly to the floor, so I decided I wanted to make it shorter. Even if I wanted to wear it midi length, I would have still taken a couple of inches out, but I've actually shortened it even further so it just falls above my knee. And I just find that that's a better length on me, and because otherwise I feel like I end up looking really diddy and short, which is just not the look that I am going for myself. So I did make an adjustment to the pattern piece. So this is the pattern piece. It's a long, big piece. Now, what I did is where there's the shortening length and lines, I actually folded up the pattern here and then again at the bottom. Now, what I was trying to do at the bottom here was keep the split. So the split, you can see this bit that comes out here is here. So I was trying to keep the split at the bottom because I think that's a really nice feature, as well as shorten the dress. So overall, I think I shortened it by about 6 inches. And that actually ended up working really well, and I could still fold up my hem and it was totally fine. Other than that, I didn't make any adjustments, which is such a surprise, and it has really encouraged me to be more drawn to named patterns because clearly the block fits my body quite well, and it's really lovely to find a pattern company that actually happens for. Another one that does that is True Bias, because I did make my Shelby dress without any adjustments as well. So next up was the instructions. So as most woven garments require, this did ask you to do a few things. So you had to do some interfacing on the collar and the button placket where the tie is and things like that. So I did all of that quite easily using fusible interfacing. That wasn't too bad a job. I got that done one day and then I was ready to sew another day. You also need some other materials, so it does require, I think I used 8 buttons in the end, but if you're making the longer version you will probably need 9 or 10. On the pattern is actually listed, there's actually 10 on the actual dress pattern, so you will need 10 buttons. And I hadn't thought about that, so I just picked them out of my stash. So I have got, I've got 5 buttons that all match and 3 at the bottom that are the same size and colour, but slightly different design. Then you will also need something to use for the drawstring, so you might use your fabric, or you might find some bias binding or some kind of hoodie drawstring to use. And the other thing that you will need that I didn't really consider is some ribbon or cotton tape to go round to form the drawstring casing. So that's important to remember as well. And I will show you the inside of the dress to show you that later on. So instructions. Now, I would say that I struggled a little bit with the instructions. I had to read them multiple times to kind of get what they were asking, and I didn't feel that the diagrams were that clear. So the first part of the pattern I found quite easy. I did choose to leave the pockets off because I don't want to emphasise my chest any more than it already is, really. And also actually sewing on a patch pocket, I wouldn't use them for anything. I did consider sewing in some side seam pockets, but I went against it in the end just due to the fabric that I was using. So the first things is fine, you do the pockets, do your darts, so that all worked out really well. And then you do your back yoke, which again worked out fine. Where I came into confusion was where you have to put the facing pieces on. You have to attach them to one half of the back yoke along with the shoulder seams of the front pieces, and I just could not for the life of me get my head around that. Eventually I did kind of work it out and it was fine. And then you add the collar and then do the burrito method to pull everything together. And this stage, it's this page, steps 7 to 11, which is where I got very confused. Luckily I've got quite a visual brain and actually try and pin in a few things, and I had already made the Kokoawa Crafts honeycomb dress, which has the burrito method, so I already learned it from that. So actually it was okay, but I would say that was a bit of a sticking point. It was a bit tricky and I did struggle to fit my collar on. This pattern didn't ask you to stay stitch the neckline, So it meant that my neckline and collar had stretched out slightly by the time I got to it. So if you are making this pattern, think about where a pattern would ask you to stay stitch and make sure you do stay stitch. So the place where this really mattered was around the collar for me. I didn't stay stitch this bit, and it did mean that by the time I got to it, it had stretched out. Now I did kind of wiggle it in and it does look absolutely fine, but it's just worth kind of remembering that if you're gonna make this pattern. So that was where I had the kind of most problems. Other than that, it all went fairly smoothly for the next bit. The second place where I had a little bit of a tricky situation was putting in the drawstring casing. Now, as I showed you, the pattern piece looks like this. So this is the front piece, and it's got a line just here, and this is where you place the casing for your drawstring. So what you have to do is basically attach a long ribbon or cotton tape, I used cotton tape, to a straight line just along the middle of the fabric. Now I find that really confusing. I am not the most accurate person. I did mark things, but it got a little bit confusing with the fabric, and I felt that this was really tricky for me. I did get it right, but if you look on the inside, and I'll take this dress off and show you the inside, it's a bit wonky. I mean, it doesn't really matter because it's on the inside that you can see the wonkiness. On the outside, you can't really see it because it's all gathered there. But that was a bit tricky. And then it's really important to pay attention to where they ask you to do the buttonholes. So here, where the drawstring is, you have to do a buttonhole. On the inside, you can see the cotton tape comes up and over the buttonhole. So the buttonhole is there. You can see the cotton tape behind it, and it comes up and over it. So that means you have to do your buttonholes and then secure this around it. So again, that was a thinking point. I was about to sew it and I was like, oh no, I need to stop. I've not done the buttonholes. So basically pay careful attention around the attaching of the collar and securing of this area, as well as the attaching of the casing and the drawstring. However, once I've made it once now, I know how to do those things, and actually making my next version won't be a problem. So it is one of those things that, yes, I came across problems, but it wouldn't prevent me from sewing it the next time because I've already learned how to do it. So I actually love patterns like that because it means I've actually learned something. I've learned how to understand a different pattern company's instructions. I've learned how to do things a slightly different way, which is always great as part of sewing. So how long did it take me? Now, I'm trying to think. It probably took me kind of an hour and a half to cut out and interface everything. And then, but I was doing it as part of cutting out lots of things, so it's kind of an estimation. And then to actually make it, I think it took about a day, and then I left it to hang to do before I did the hem. But when I say a day, I mean a couple of hours. So that time between, like after lunch, until kind of 4 or 5 o'clock. So I think overall, and I wasn't like speed sewing, it took about 5 hours. But the next one would be a lot quicker, and I would definitely consider batch sewing these because there's a lot of tasks that you could batch sew as well. So I think it is a little bit of an involved make. You know, you've got your buttonholes, you've got your drawstring casing, you've got to attach a collar and a facing, and you've got all the interfacing to do. But actually it's totally worth it, and I know that I'm going to get so much wear out of this, and I'm going to make loads of them as well. And actually it's totally appropriate for school, and I could put a cardigan over the top in the autumn as well. So a fantastic make. I am so pleased with it. And I would definitely make it again. So I would make it again in this version. I would also consider, some people have done hacks into just doing like a blouse, a shirt type blouse, so I could cut it off and not include the drawstring and wear it like that. And I am also thinking maybe a sleeveless version. I might have to bring the armhole up a little bit. I think there's loads of things that I could do with this, and I am going to be using this pattern as like a base when I make other shirt patterns, because this fits, I feel like this fits me really quite nicely, and actually that would be really good to kind of compare it to other patterns so that I can use it as a base to kind of develop from. So let me stand up and show you the dress. So here you can see the whole of the dress, so you can see it comes just above my knee. This fabric is nice and swooshy, and actually I really love the kind of airy summer vibes that this dress gives. I have got the slight side slits in. They come up to about my mid-thigh, and then you've got the drawstring to bring the waist in. And as you can see, I've got quite a lot of movement in my arms, just due to the loose-fitting nature of the dress. But still, I think it emphasised my waist, which I really like about it. And from the back, so you can see the yoke and the collar attached there. So overall, really pleased, and I think it will make a great summer addition to any wardrobe at all. So I'm just going to take this off and then I will show you the inside. So the inside. So you can see where I've attached the inside yoke, and I added this really cute label, Room for Cake. Those are by Pink Coat Club and I'll link them below. You can see how the facing is attached. So it's sewn into the shoulder seam here, there, and the collar is also sewn in. So it's a really nice, neat edge there. So that was quite a confusing bit. And then all of the inside, I've overlocked the edges and hemmed. Now, one thing that I'm really not very good at, and it's because I'm impatient, I need to be better at hemming woven garments, because I just kind of go like blag it, and actually I need to take more care and attention. Maybe I should try some couture techniques to just slow myself down. So I'll show you, I've got a tiny little pucker. Camera focus. Just there's a little pucker. But nobody will know. Well, you will all know, but you're not going to come up to me and say, oh, you've got a pucker in your sleeve. So what I found quite tricky was this bit. So you can see on the inside of the dress, you've got the casing for the drawstring. And I used this thick cotton tape that I had. Now you can see mine do not match up. My buttonholes do match up, though they're in the right place. So I don't know, it's just how it came together. But you can't notice because on the other side it doesn't notice, because that's where there's a bow. So you can see my very, very untidy stitching in blue thread to make it all the more obvious. And that's because I find that really tricky. So I'm trying to think of ways to kind of either not have to do that, or maybe I could do a stitching line and use that as a guide across the fabric somehow. Maybe I just need to mark it better. If you've got any ideas of how you can more accurately place that cotton tape in the middle of a piece of fabric, then please kind of let me know, because I think I am going to make more of this dress and I want to be able to do it better. Yeah, and then at the back, again, that's the problem I've had. But the drawstring goes through absolutely fine. It looks really lovely on. So I don't know if those problems were the end of the world when I was making this. And then for the drawstring, I kind of wish I'd have had enough fabric to do a fabric drawstring, and I could have done that, but I used this blue cotton tape, which doesn't completely match, and I think I might change it in the future, but actually for now it's absolutely fine. And then for my buttons, I've got these really cute kind of pearlescent buttons, and then at the bottom, they're not pearlescent. And the buttonholes went absolutely fine. My machine, my Genome Atelier 6, does fantastic buttonholes. One did go wrong, but I don't know what was going on with that. It's a bit strange, but I can actually get this dress on and off without undoing any of the buttons. So I'm kind of tempted to make one where I continue it like you would, but actually then stitch the middle together and not do buttons. So it will look like kind of a covered placket, but it won't be, it's just there won't be any buttons there. Or I think you could get away with somehow cutting the skirt piece not separate, and just have your facing to there. I don't know, there's loads of things that I would love to play about with this pattern. I think is a great base for lots of hacks. So really pleased with that make. I will definitely make more, and a few hacked versions as well. I hope that gave you a little bit of an insight into the pattern, and let me know your opinions if you have made the Reeta shirt dress. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please press a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to hear more from me. Goodbye.